Hello everyone, welcome to this part of the review where we'll be covering inventory. So there are four main types of inventory that we'll be covering. That's FIFO periodic, FIFO perpetual, weighted average periodic, and weighted average perpetual. You might also hear weighted average perpetual being called the moving weighted average or moving average. It's basically just weighted average perpetual. So with that, let's get started into the question. Most questions will basically look like this. It'll give you a bunch of purchases, it'll give you sales, and will tell you what the starting inventory is. And it'll ask you what the ending inventory value is. And it'll ask you what the cost of goods sold is. So the very first one we'll be solving is weighted average perpetual. So let's get started. So basically you have to construct a table similar to this. It should have transactions, all the transactions that are going to happen on one side. And on the right side, we'll be maintaining a tally of what the total balance is, of how much we have at present. So first of all, this is how much our starting inventory is. So let's just go ahead and fill the amounts in. We are told we have 6,000 items, the cost of which is $7.95. So let's find the total cost of that. I'm using the calculator to just do 7.95 into 6,000, which gives us 47,700, right? Now let's go ahead and put down the purchases and sales as we see in this table here. The very first one, we purchase something. So purchase one, number of units. So we are purchasing 7,000 units. Cost per unit is 8.4. And the total cost of this, we'll deal with that later. Next, we are told that we make a sale for 6,500. So sale 6,500. Now, a common mistake that people do in this case is they'll put 24,000 here. Sorry, they'll put $24 here, the one here. But remember, the selling price does not matter. We do not care about the selling price right now. We are only caring about how much the purchase price is and what our carrying value is. Next, we make another purchase of 8,000 items. And that purchase we make at $9 per unit. And lastly, we make one more, we make a sale. So let's just call this sale 2, which is for 5,500 units. And the price of that will be determined later. An important thing for such questions is if you carry either a red pencil, like a color pencil, or you highlight or something, or even if you just add a negative mark here, it'll help you keep track of all the negatives so that you don't accidentally add up something where you should have subtracted it. I find it very useful to use color pencils for such things, or even if you write with pencil and you just highlight it a little with a color pencil and shade it, that's really helpful to me at least. So let's go ahead and solve this. So we had 6,000 units. We purchased 7,000 more. Adding those two numbers up gives us a total of 13,000. Right? Which means we now have 13,000 units in our balance. And what is the total cost for the purchase? So let's do 7,000. So 7,000 times 8.4 gives us 58,800. Now let's do the balance. So let's find what the total cost is. So initially we had 47,700. To that we added this much value. So let's add those two numbers up. 47,700 plus 588 gives us a total of 106,500. Now that we made a purchase, our weighted average price changes. So let's calculate that. We take the total cost and divide it by the number of units. So 106,500 divided by 13,000 gives us 8.1923. I like taking it to 4 or 5 decimal values. So that's normally the question might even tell you how many decimal values to take it out, but I like taking it to 4 or 5. Now we are making a very first sale. So whenever sale is made, items are sold at the weighted average price. So right now, our weighted average price is 8.1923. So that means if we are selling 6,500 units, our total cost here will be 6,504 times 8.1923 gives you a total of 53,249. Let's just round it to 53,250. Okay, and that's a negative here because we'll be removing that value. Now let's go ahead and find how many units we have left. We have 13,000. We sold 6,500. So 14,000 minus 6,500 gives you 6,500. And then we sold, we had 106,500. From that, we removed the total cost value of this much. So let's find what our balance is. Great. Now we can also find the weighted average price, but since it's a sale, there'll be no change in the cost, so it'll remain 8.1923. But if you want, you can always divide these two numbers. It will give you the same value. Now we made a purchase. So let's see how much the total value of this purchase is. 8,000 times 9 is 72,000. Okay. So how does this change our number of units? So we had 6,500. We purchased 8,000 more. So 2,000 plus 6,500 gives you 14,500. And we have this much value. To that, we added this much value. So let's see what our total value is. It's 125,250. Now let's find what the weighted average price is. You take the total cost divided by number of units. So 125,250 divided by 145,000 gives you weighted average price of 8.6379. Great, now we're making a sale. So whenever we're making a sale, the sale will happen at the weighted average price. So what is the current one? It's this much. So let's just copy that here. And now let's multiply these two values to find the total value of the trade. That is minus 47508. Great. Now let's find what our balance is. So we had this much, we removed this much. Let's find 14,500 minus 5,500. That's 9,000. So at the end, we have 9,000 units. And let's find the ending value. So 125,250 minus 47508 gives you 77742. This is our ending value. So this end inventory is equal to 77742. Great. It also asks us to find cost of goods sold. So to find cost of goods sold, all you have to do is go and see what the price for each of the sales were. And this is basically what your cost of goods sold is. So just add those two numbers, 53250 plus 47508. That gives you a cost of goods sold of $100,000, 750. And this is how much a cost of goods sold is. Again, you can put the cost per unit if you want, but it won't change. So it's still the same. So again, as you notice, every time we make a purchase, the weighted average price changes. Now, similarly, this was weighted average perpetual. let's go ahead and do weighted average periodic. So in this case, we need to find weighted average price for the whole transaction, and we'll be using that one number as the weighted average for when we need to find any of the values. So when we need to know what the end inventory is, when we need to know what the cost of goods sold is, we're going to use that weighted average price to multiply by everything. Okay, so let's do weighted average periodic. So weighted average cost. This is basically like a golden ratio. We'll be multiplying all the unit figures we get by this value to get how much their total value is. This will be, so the formula for this is the dollar value of units available for sale divided by number of units available for sale. So you're taking the total value of the goods that we have available for sale and you're dividing it by the number of units. That will give us the weighted average cost. So let's go ahead and do that. So as we can see in this question here, as you can see in this question, we have each of these transactions. So every time this transaction happens, we just need to see how many goods will be available for sale. So the very first goods that we'll have for sale are the ones that we had in the beginning, then whatever we purchased, and then whatever we purchased the second time. So let's see what's the value of these goods. 6,000 times 7.95 times 6,000 gives us 47,700. Then next one is 7,000 times 8.4, which gives us 58,800. And lastly, we have 8,000 times 9, which gives you 72,000. Now, add all of these up. And that value is how much, what's the value of the goods available for sale. So let's add them up. This is a value of 178,500. At the same time, see how many units are available for sale. So 6,000 plus 7,000 plus 8,000, so 6 plus 7 plus 8, just 21,000. We have 21,000 units available for sale, which has the value of this much. This is dollars, this is units. So obviously, if we divide this by this, it'll give us a dollars per units amount, which is a weighted average price. So let's do that. Let's divide this by 21,000. So 178,500 divided by 21,000 gives us 8.5. Okay, so this 8.5 is the value here. This is now a weighted average cost that we'll be using for everything. So now all we have to do is determine this again, dollars per unit. Let's determine how many units are there. So first thing we need to know is how much is ending inventory, right? Let's see how many items we have at the end. So how many units we have at the end? Let me just clean up my screen maybe. Okay, so these are positive, these are negative, this is positive, this is negative. So let's just add and subtract these numbers. 6,000 plus 7,000 minus 6,500 plus 8,000 minus 5,500. So our ending inventory numbers, adding all of these gives you 9,000. The ending inventory is equal to 9,000 units times this cost, 8.5, which gives us 76,500. Next, we need to know what the cost of goods sold is. For this, just see how many goods have been sold. So 65,000 and sorry, 6,500 and 5,500. So 65 plus 5,500 gives us 12,000. So 12,000 goods have been sold. 8.5. Again, we keep using the same cost that we've gotten. So 8.5 times 12,000 gives you 102. So again, this has been solved. So as you can see, for weighted average, you get a different value for ending inventory here and here, and your cost of goods sold have different values when compared to one another. But now, next we'll be doing first in, first out, FIFO. So we'll be doing FIFO periodic and perpetual, and we'll see that for either method, we get the exact same answers for ending inventory and cost of goods sold. So in case if the question doesn't specify which method to use, you can use whichever one you find easier. Some of you might find it easier to just make the table. Others might find it easier to just use the direct method. We'll learn how to do both today. So let's go ahead and do FIFO perpetual. Okay. Again, let's just go ahead and fill in the, so whatever this information we have here, let's just copy it exactly. So the first thing that happens is we have 6,000 units, which have a cost of 47,000. We determine this by multiplying 6,000 by its original value, 7.95. So 7.95 times 6,000 gives you 47,700, right? Now next, let's put purchase one. How many units were purchased? 7,000. What is the cost of these units? 8.4. Next, we made a sale. So that's sale one. That was 6,000 units. At what price? That we'll determine later. Next, we have purchase two, which was for 800 units. And those 8,000 units at $9 each. And lastly, we made another sale two, for 5,500 units. So let's just go ahead and fill this table. Now remember, when it comes to FIFO, the main thing that will matter is anything that's in the inventory earlier needs to be sold first of all. So the very first units that we'll be selling will be these 6,000 units right here. So firstly, we are purchasing 7,000. Let's see what the total transaction cost for that is. 7,000 times 8.4 gives us 58,800. Great. Next, let's do it for purchase two as well. 8,000 times 9, which is 72,000. Great. So now, after this, we purchase some units. How much have we purchased? We purchased 7,000. So that gives us 13,000 units. And we add the total cost together, 58,800 plus 47,700. Gives us 500. So now we're selling 6,000 units, right? So the very first 6,000 units that we'll sell is the entirety of, it's 6,500. The first sale is 6,500, not 6,000. So since it's 6,500, first of all, we'll sell the 6,000 units that we had here. So let's sell off this 6,000. Okay. What was the value of this? The price for this was 7.97. So the cost for this was 7.97. Sorry, 7.95. So 7.95. And we know the total cost for that was 47,700. But remember, it was for 6,500. So we've also sold 500 more units. The next 500 units will be sold from this purchase batch. So 500 units. Now we'll use this cost, 8.4. Let's find what's 500 times 8.4. That's 4,200. And now let's find what our total balance, what our balance units are. So from 13,000, we subtract 6,500. That gives us 6,500. And the total cost, we subtract the two numbers. So that's 106,500 minus 47,700 minus 200, 54,600, right? Now we purchased 8,000 more units. So let's add those in here. 6,500 plus 8,000 gives you 14,500. And let's add the total costs together. 54,600 plus 72, 126,600. Great. Now, we sold 500 of these units, right? Which means now there's 6,500 here remaining. Out of that, we're selling 5,500. So the price for this 5,500 will be this 8.4. And since we have more than enough, we are able to just use this transaction and we won't be eating anything into purchase two. So all of this fits into purchase one. So 8.4. So let's do 5,500 times 8.4. That gives you 46,200. And now find what your balance is. So your end balance will be 9,000 and this will be 80,400. Perfect. Now when you need to calculate your ending inventory, this value is your ending inventory. And when you need to find your cost of goods sold, you just need to add these two numbers up. That will give you your cost of goods sold. Easy enough, right? So this is 80,400 and cost of goods sold should give you a value of 98,100. Okay, so that is FIFO perpetual. Let's try FIFO periodic. Okay, when you do FIFO periodic, we first calculate how much end inventory we have. So let's see. Again, these were negatives. The rest are positives. So let's see what our ending inventory is. We had 6,000 in the start. We purchased 7,000. We sold off 6,500. So we subtract that. We add 8,000 because we purchased some more, and then we subtract 5,500, which gives us a total ending inventory of 9,000. Now, when you're finding the ending inventory value, this 9,000 will obviously be the newest 9,000 goods that we have. It means that out of all the goods that we've sold off all the old stuff. So the only thing that will be remaining in the inventory will be all the new stuff. So let's see how much of the new stuff is there. So the new stuff will consist of all the purchases made in purchase one. And whatever is remaining will obviously be from purchase two, and the rest will be from purchase one. So this is 9,000. Purchase two had 8,000 units. So that means the entirety of purchase two is still remaining. We haven't sold that off, but we also have 1,000 units from purchase one that hasn't been sold off yet. So let's find the value of those 1,000. that'll obviously be 1000 times 8.4, which is 8400, and the entirety of purchase too. So that's 8000 times 9, which gives you 72,000. And if you add these two numbers up, that gives you your ending inventory. So that's 8400 plus 72123 gives you 80,400, which if we go back is exactly the value we had here. So now let's find what a cost of goods sold is. So to find cost of goods sold, I use a formula, which is very intuitive. So whatever your ending inventory will always be equal to your starting inventory plus any purchases minus any sales will give you your ending inventory, right? This should be fairly obvious because the only things coming in are purchases, only things going out are sales, and whatever you started with. And if you make this adjustment, it'll give you your ending inventory. Now, we've just figured out how much the value of our ending inventory is, which is 80,400. And the question tells us how much the beginning inventory value is. So that is how much our start value is right here. This value right here. So let's multiply 6,000 by 7.95. That gives us 47,700. To that, we add the purchases. So the purchases are these two values. So let's add those two up. 7,000 times 8.4 plus 8,000 times 9. That gives us 130,800. Subtract from that the sales. The sales are basically the cost of goods sold, right? So we can just write cost of goods sold is equal to the ending inventory of this much. What you have here is a very simple equation with only one missing variable. So let's go ahead and find what that is. So cost of goods sold is equal to 47,700 plus 130,800 minus 18,400. 47. That gives the value of 89, 98, 100. This value is exactly what we got here. See, both of them give us the same answer. So if given a choice, you can pick whichever method you find easier. This is normally much faster to do. So you can always do FIFO periodic and find the answer to that, and it will be the same as FIFO perpetual. But if the question specifically asks you to make this schedule, in that case, know how to do it and solve it accordingly. Most often, exam questions will ask you for weighted average periodic, will ask you weighted average perpetual, and will ask you for FIFO periodic. FIFO perpetual is not asked as often, so you should know how to do these other three methods. So these three methods are going to be the most important for you. So except for FIFO, these three are the most important in my opinion. So yeah, that's the video for inventory. I hope you all are able to do it well. If you solve just one or two questions from this part, this is a high value question, so it'll definitely be one of the long answers, I'm sure. And that's a lot of easy marks that you can get. There's not much to get confused about. So hopefully you all do well for this session.